Okay, so for the raspberries, I'm just using a white outline consistency icing, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm just going to be hand painting them afterwards. So what I need is a little piece of cellophane, and I'm just going to be kind of doing this by hand, but you could have a picture of a raspberry that you lay this on top of so that you have sort of a template that you would be following. And I need maybe like 4 or 5 of these. So I'm just going to start doing a little squiggle. I kind of want this to be a little bit flatter because it's kind of going to be the hollow portion of the raspberry. And we're going to build the raspberry up around it. Now we're going to do some of the little bumpy parts of the raspberries, kind of around the front. And now I'm gonna do some little dollops along the backside so that it looks like our raspberries more three-dimensional. This is gonna come together, I promise. Probably doesn't look much like a raspberry yet. Now we're gonna do another layer of these little dollops coming down our raspberry. So I'm gonna continue adding little dollops and just kind of making the raspberry a little bit narrower as it comes forward. We'll let that crust over a little bit and then we'll come back and add more to it. I'm gonna just build these up again. I want them to be a little bit three-dimensional. So I'm gonna come back around the top here and do another layer. I mean, ultimately, we just kind of want a lumpy, bumpy bulb. All right, so we're gonna paint these raspberries. So I've got a burgundy and I've got a deep red. These are just the Americolor gel food coloring. So hopefully this is dry enough to paint. I'm not totally sure which color. I'm just gonna wet my brush a little bit. I'm just using water. Sometimes water, you don't want to go too heavy on it because it can kind of eat away at your icing a little bit. You might get some little holes and things. So if that's the case, sometimes using like an alcohol will evaporate quicker without deteriorating the icing. So I'm just painting my whole raspberry right now with this red, and then we'll go back in after and kind of do some like shading and detailing. But for right now, we're just kind of covering the entire surface. So I'm just using the red. I wasn't sure if I was going to be using the burgundy or the red, but so far I'm just using the red. The nice thing about transfers too is like we're going to peel off the back, so we can get right down on these edges with our brush, and it's going to make a mess, and that's okay because when we peel it away we'll still have a nice clean edge. And when you're using food coloring, it doesn't dry quite the same when you're painting with food coloring. It doesn't dry quite the same as your icings do that have food coloring mixed into them. It does keep a little bit of a tacky, shinier surface to it. So if you're selling a cookie that you've painted, you need to just brush a little bit of cornstarch just lightly over top before you package it, and then that'll just kind of like seal in that food coloring and kind of just prevent it from kind of sticking to the cellophane package that you're putting it into. So now we're going to do a little bit of darker detailing, and I might actually just come into my burgundy because it has a slightly different undertone to it. So I might kind of mix these two together, get a little bit more depth. And I want to kind of come into this hollowed area. That we created. And really like emphasize that space back there. Now, I'm using pretty much a dry brush at this point because I don't want this color to spread around too much. And I kind of want to emphasize the crevices in between all these bulbs. So I'm just kind of taking a darker color and tapping in the little areas in between to kind of emphasize the shadows and the three-dimensional aspect of the raspberry. And I'm going to actually shade more darker along the whole edge over here as well. Okay, now we are going to do highlighting. So we're going to use our white food coloring. So I'm just going to put a drop of my white food coloring in here. Again, this is the Americolor gel as well. I'm going to use a nice clean brush. And which one do I want to use? Maybe just this one. And I'm going to use a dry brush because I really don't want to dilute the color of this white at all. I want it to be really prominent, and I'm going to come in and just highlight. And the nice thing actually right now is my light from my window is coming in from over this side, and that's what I'm trying to mimic on this raspberry. I'm trying to mimic light coming in from the top and shadow on the dark. So I'm actually kind of just going to use my highlight, and I'm going to tap where I'm seeing that light hitting my raspberry from my window in real life. All right, those are our little raspberries. So we're going to set them aside to dry. We can add our little transfers. So we're going to come back to these, and I'm going to try to peel one off. And pop it on my cake.